About a month or two ago, I saw the 50th re-release for Jaws, and damn, it really, really still holds up. Everything about the movie is great. It's perfectly shot. Each shot on average lasts pretty long, which really adds to the much more suspenseful atmosphere of the movie. Compare this to modern creature feature action type movies, which just spam different shots and, cut every 5 seconds. The writing of the movie really stands out on how to be, simple, it's yet effective. The role of each of the main 3 characters is so different that it leads to a great variety of mentalities, dealing with the shark and, a lot of fun banter. The part that really stood out to me most about the writing is the ending. The shark hops onto the boat. He eats Quint. He gets close to eating Brody, but he tosses the chemical thing into the shark's mouth, and the shark swims away, which gives Brody the shot to shoot it, causing the shark to explode. Hopper swims back up, so him and Brody, they grab a plank and swim off to the land, with Brody making a remark about how he no longer hates water as much. And we'd be thinking, so, why did this ending stand out to me? If anything, you might think it seems a little short, everything gets wrapped up pretty quick. Well, that's exactly the point, especially because it doesn't dumb anything down to the audience and try to tie everything up neatly. If Jaws was released as a blockbuster today, we'd have had a scene where Brody sees his family after this, then we would have seen the mayor get his comeuppance and then stick it to the mayor. Then we would have seen, Quint's funeral, and we would have gotten one last heartfelt dialogue to hear between Hopper and Brody. We would have gotten so much unnecessary shit. Now, I should make it clear, not every movie released today does this. And to be honest, outside of huge blockbusters, it isn't really a problem. When I see even more popular theatrical, non-blockbuster movies, they still have short endings where not everything is tied up. But modern blockbusters definitely have this problem. An example that a lot of people bring up that I kind of agree with is The Batman. Now, don't get me wrong, this movie is peak, the acting's peak, the cinematography's peak, the overall aesthetic, the look of Gotham, it's all peak. The plot is kind of like a 7 out of 10, I'm not gonna lie. And part of the reason is this fuck-ass ending. It's bloated in a lot of different ways. First off, the ending has a complete plot structure kind of separation from the rest of the movie. Well, that's not always a bad thing. It feels very disappointing to go from, this gritty, relatively low-stake mystery, kind of film noir-esque plot to an action high-stakes, it's much more generic kind of cape shit where he's just saving everyone from a big city-ending disaster. It feels very jarring and kind of disjointed, as well as adding to the bloating the ending. Not to mention, he was completely out of character for the Riddler, guy who goes from meticulously targeting people and finding out where they are and the best way to kill them, to just blowing up the entire fucking city, having a disaster that mostly spares politicians and the rich. It just doesn't really add up. Speaking of the Riddler, him and Batman are pretty much the only main arcs that are in any way kind of involved in this ending. Nothing new really comes out with Catwoman or any of the other characters. That's not always a bad thing. But it makes the ending have a much more slower pace compared to the rest of the movie. Because the rest of the movie, each character kind of has, a big part to play. Even minor characters like the Penguin. Now that I've talked about, the actual good movie, Bloated ending, this next Bloated ending is from a dogshit one. That's Jurassic World Rebirth. Came out this year. And I don't want to turn it into a rant about this movie, but holy fuck, this might be the most laziest, boring character development I've ever seen in a movie. And that's not just in the ending. Throughout the entire movie, there's nothing but just awkward and janky conversations, especially between Duncan and Scarlett Johansson's character about how his daughter dies, and it feels so just forced and out of nowhere. It doesn't really tie into anything else in the movie. It's just very bizarre. It really adds to this drawn out ending. So, what is this drawn out ending? Well, they get to the helicopter pad. You think the movie's gonna end, right? They're at the helicopter pad? Nope. Bunch of dinosaurs spawn camped and get the jump on the characters. But luckily they get to safety, so you think that's it? No. A horrible, cartoonishly psychopathic villain shows up, tries to foil the heroes. Luckily he gets eaten by the sub-5 T-Rex. You think that's the end? No. Because now they gotta deal with the fucking T-Rex. So Duncan decides to do a heroic, cliched sacrifice, and they float away on the boat. So now's the end? No, turns out it was a fake out death. Yeah, I guess 2025 is the year of the return of the fake out death. So yeah, terrible movie, terrible, just like drawn out ending. It really showcases a bloated ending. This next movie is another 2025 movie, and it's honestly probably my top 3 for this year so far. That's one battle after another. You know, this movie is pretty fucking amazing. And honestly, it doesn't have that much of a long drawn out ending. In fact, it's really only one scene, and that's the scene with Lockjaw and his death. It's just so pointless and bizarre. The reveal that he was alive in the desert is like pretty peak, you know, especially in regards to the way it's shot with the kind of heat blur and him walking towards the camera. You know, the suspense really builds up. But then you get this kind of predictable, boring, like cliched, not really boring, but just like cliched scene where he's meeting with the guys, and you know, you're supposed to think he's going to get away with it. You're supposed to be totally shocked when they kill him, but let's be honest, everyone could see it coming, and it just kind of sours the other ending scenes, like the letter and her going off, which are much better. It was a pretty pointless scene. He could have just stayed dead in the car. Now, what is the reason for this, you know, phenomena of modern big movies having these like really bloated, drawn out endings? Well, I have a little game theory, alright? And that's, you know, as everyone knows, you know, so serial overarching TV shows have really, you know, taken over in recent years. Consumers love them. One defining aspect of these TV shows is that they have like a million different arcs and subplots that are all constantly going on. And, you know, these can never really exist inside a movie. And for most of these subplots and arcs, audiences constantly want, you know, conclusions and satisfaction. That's why a lot of discourse you'll see about TV shows ending, it's rarely ever about the general quality. It's more about whether or not it was satisfying. And normally, people rarely ever use that mindset for movies, mostly because movies are way less of a time commitment compared to shows. So people aren't as mad if a movie ending doesn't conclude every thread and character. But now I feel like studios and even some writers maybe are seeing this mindset about TV shows and are applying it to movies and thinking that it will help the success and lead to like better movies, which I feel like is just not the case, and it just leads to drawn out bloating endings. Now this is just speculation, you know, I don't have any data or statistics to back this up, but I feel like I really hit the nail in the coffin here. So let me know if you guys think I'm right, and let me know just in general what you guys think in the comments about bloating endings. You know, in conclusion, I'm sick of bloated endings, and new videos soon.